My name's Ed Fries. I've been around the game business really since I was a kid. Started writing games for the Atari 800 back in the old days. Went to work for a company called Microsoft, and I had to do office software for about 10 years, and then I got to do what I really wanted, which was run their game business, and was part of the team that launched the original Xbox, which was really fun. After I retired from Microsoft, I kind of went back to my roots and started playing around on the old Atari machines. One of the things I do for fun is restore some of the very first arcade machines in the world. But I also wrote a game for the Atari 2600 called Halo 2600. What would Halo look like on the Atari 2600? So that was a lot of fun, and it's a real game, runs in 4K on a cartridge you can get for your Atari 2600. So anyway, that's some, gives me some credibility in interviewing you.
All right. Just a little.
But anyway, and I'm here with Feargal. Why don't you introduce yourself?
So my name is Feargal Mac, and I'm working with Atari and helping them launch this Ataribox project that we're going to talk about and get into a little bit more in this discussion, right?
Absolutely. Okay. Well, let's get started. So I want to get into your history a little. What gives you the background to be able to launch your own game console?
Besides being crazy, partly, or having a bit of manic kind of craziness about me. So my background, I'm Irish, you can probably tell from the accent. And I worked in a number of big tech companies. So I worked at Apple, I worked at Epson, and I worked at Lenovo. American, Japanese, Chinese tech companies. I did a bunch of different roles in operations, engineering, production over the years. And going back a few years ago, I really wanted to get out of big companies and get involved in startups because I thought that seemed like a lot of fun. And that's what I did. I started to help some startups, and I was involved in a startup making a product called Game Band. We did a product with Minecraft, and we have another product we're working on at the moment. And it was amazing because I learned, actually, I thought I was very clever working in big companies. When you're doing it with no safety net from the ground up, it's really hard, and you have to relearn everything all over again, right? So that's what led me into startups, is this desire to build products, build tools. And sometimes in a big company, there's a lot of trade-offs that are not always fun to be a part of, and I thought it would be fun to have the freedom of doing it in a startup, not taking into account all the pain of doing it. But that's what I've done and been involved with, and Atari, obviously a well-known company, but this is really something new we're bringing back with Atari that we'll talk about some more.
Yeah, so I'm here to ask the hard questions, not,
awesome.
you know, so I mean, you do have a history doing crowdfunding. And in fact, you have one project that's out there right now, Game Band, and people haven't got their Game Bands yet. So.
No, they haven't, but they will.
Why are you doing something new?
Yeah, so besides being crazy. No, so we have a project out there at the moment, Game Band. It's on another crowdfunding platform some of you guys may have heard of. Right? And we have an incredibly, just a great bunch of backers. We're running a few months behind on when it gets delivered, but you know, great experience as well, because when you talk to your backers, it's been amazing. Not one single complaint. When we said, look, we're 3-4 months, it's going to be a December delivery, they're all like fine and supporting because they're involved in the process, which is a great thing of crowdfunding. So we have that going on. It's a different team, it's a different technology, it's different, you know, trying to fit things into a wearable product is very different from building a box. You've got a whole bunch of, you know, haptic and physical problems to deal with. We're doing that with Qualcomm, and who are huge in that space. So it's a very different thing, but it's still a consumer product, and where you have to take a lot of stuff. I mean, hardware is hard. We'll talk about that, right? And so a very different product. But the opportunity to do the Ataribox has come along, and it's just such a great opportunity that I've signed up to try and do both. So I wear two hats, with two different teams driving these two projects to market. So 2018 is going to be a really interesting and probably challenging year, but fun as well, right?
Yeah, and we're here at Indiegogo today. So what made you bring this project to Indiegogo?
That's a good question. So, you know, I think there was two sides of it. As Atari, why crowdfunding, right? And one of the things about Atari that I've, you know, seen and learned having been involved with them these past few months is community. Atari still has this incredible community, right? No matter who you talk to, they have an Atari story. People are so involved. In fact, even this trip going through customs, it's the first time where I said in New York to the customs officers, where do you work? I'm working with Atari. Totally different. Oh my God, I had one as a child, right? And what I've learned is that community has really kept it alive, right? So bringing it to life, bringing this box to life through crowdfunding, lets us take that community in as part of the process and be involved in it and give feedback in it. I think it's the only way to do it. We'll talk about this use case in a bit, and it's really a different positioning of a TV device, right? And you have to learn and take feedback from the real customers. So doing it through crowdfunding lets you do that. That's one of the main reasons we're doing crowdfunding. Indiegogo, which was your main question.
Right.
I've learned a lot about Indiegogo in the last 6 weeks. If I'm really blunt, we were taking this in a different direction, and then I met some of the Indiegogo team, and it's been fascinating, I think, what's gone on here in the last year and beyond. But I think Indiegogo has really doubled down on products, and they brought a lot of very concrete things to help people get to market. Not just words, but actual concrete things. So they have this relationship with Arrow Electronics, which is a Fortune 100 component company who've 25 people working for Indiegogo. Wow. And it's 15 dedicated engineers. So when a project goes on, it's Arrow certified. You got this huge Fortune 100 tech company saying this can be built and can be built at this price. Stuff like that we found like really kind of consoling as you're trying to bring a product to market. It's real resources. So they're focused on product, having those real resources at the table. The team themselves are genuinely passionate about Atari and understand what we're trying to do. And it's also in doubling down on products, and they've had a lot of successful products delivered. I mean, you guys are talking about products that are being delivered in the market in the past few months. There's also big brands. So you have people like it's GE, Harman Kardon. There's a number of brands, Motorola, maybe I'm saying them wrong, Unilever, I hope I'm getting them right, who are also launching products on Indiegogo. So there's a corporate link. Why? To really bring them to life with their customers, because it leads to a better product long term. This is not about just raise some money, do this thing or not. It's about really bringing products to life in a more collaborative way. So they're better products, right? And all of that led me to kind of really in the last few weeks, change how we're going to do this and really lock in and do it with the Indiegogo team. So we're pretty excited about it.
Okay, I think you've kissed up to the crowd enough for that section.
See,
All right, well, so we talked about Indiegogo. Let's talk about Atari. I mean, the stuff I see online, people aren't sure what is Atari today versus Atari when I was a kid. I mean, they're still around, or what are they doing? Why and how do you get them involved in a project like this?
It's a great question, because you get that from a lot of, I get reactions of, oh my God, I remember getting an Atari as a kid, or you get the reaction of, are they still around, right? And Atari is absolutely around, and it's incredible as a brand. It's one of those brands that just ignites passion still in people, right? I see seasoned, hardcore engineers, 20, 30 years in the business, who are pretty straight-laced folks, just melt when you talk Atari, because they remember opening it under the tree at the holidays or whatever it was. So it's a brand that elicits this great passion, right? As a company, I get people saying, oh, but it's not Atari anymore. Well, yeah, it is. It's changed hands. So has Apple over the last 25 years in terms of ownership, location, employees. But there are people walking around the halls of Atari that are there 20 plus years through all of these iterations, right? But more than the ownership or the location or even the employees is, as a brand, a company stays alive because of people loving it and loving the brand. And that hasn't broken with Atari. So as I look at it as a company, it's still Atari. What it is today, however, it's evolving. It's had a great 3 or 4 years. It's come from the brink of the abyss, and you can, public numbers, it's going to be a great business case study in the future, where you see they've come from debt and a bad situation year on year, growing the revenues, working on the brand merchandising. They've got games that have done exceptionally well this year, like Roller Coaster Tycoon, classic titles that we're doing a lot of stuff to bring back. Tempest is coming back soon for console. So it's a brand that's, it's still a company, it's always been a company, it's making a great comeback, and it's super exciting to be working with a brand like that elicits so much passion, right?
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to seeing the new Blade Runner movie this weekend.
Yes.
Which has Atari branding in it, so
it's incredible.
Probably
right?
a few other people out there.
Yeah.
So let's talk about this project. I mean, I ran the games business for Microsoft during the launch of Xbox. It was not a small project. I mean, I mean, the marketing budget alone for that project was over $500 million. We had a massive team. I mean, my team was about 1,200 working on the project. But you're going to do this with a few guys and some crowdfunding. How is that even possible?
Well, it's possible for a few reasons, right? For starters, you know, we have the overhead.
It's Fleet Week, yeah.
It's going to be fun.
The Blue Angels are flying over us.
So I think it's a couple of things, right? So Sony and Microsoft, great companies, you know, the console kings. It's like Pepsi and Coke, right? And even if I gave someone $1 billion and said, go make a new Pepsi or Coke, Richard Branson tried it and failed, you can't do it, right? We're not trying to be those guys. So I think the best way to answer the question is talk about the genesis of the use case. This is a very specific use case. What drew us into this is a very specific use case. I worked on a project with a company called Minecraft, if people remember, and I got to work with a lot of younger players, and I would watch how they played. And one of the things that was interesting was they would take laptops and plug them into the TV. So, well, you have an Xbox or a PlayStation, why are you plugging your laptop into the TV? And it was the way in which they engaged. They would play something like Minecraft or other great indie games, and then they would jump into YouTube. Because when they're not playing, they're watching YouTube. Or they would have Discord or Skype in the background or Twitch. And it was this PC experience that they, on a DIY basis, were bringing into the living room. And I wondered, well, hey, what if we take PC technology, right, and we take some existing hardcore tried and tested technologies and bring it into this product and bring that to the TV in a very easy to use way, but also in a very open way. So what we've done with Ataribox is we've taken, you know, we're working with AMD, tried and tested technology. We're not building a super, you know, something that hasn't been tried before, and we're working with Linux. So we're bringing Linux to it, a tried, tested, rock solid, one of the most important operating systems in the world. So we're joining dots, and then we have a great mechanical team. So design-wise, we've been very passionate about design around Ataribox, because Atari 2600 is probably one of the most iconic products, maybe consumer products of all time. The first one to come out of Silicon Valley and go global, even before Apple. So what we try to do is take that design, evolve it around this great use case, but using and joining together a lot of very stable technologies. And that allows us a lot of leverage to get this thing delivered. And also, the people who are going to build this, which we'll announce when we go live, this is tried and tested manufacturing companies who've built a lot of the products we've already talked about. You know, and people are going to have to judge that when they see the campaign. They'll see the caliber of companies and people involved in getting this delivered. But the key thing is really taking existing stable technologies and presenting them to people in a new way, right?
Yeah, and some of these are ideas that were part of the Ouya, and I was one of the advisors to Ouya because ultimately I want to get more game developers to bring their products to more people. And I think the television is one of the sort of last places that is really where we have an opportunity to have an open platform that any developer can bring their content to. You know, and Ouya raised a bunch of money, crowdfunding, built a product, Android-based product, but wasn't ultimately successful. So why will you succeed where they failed?
So I think there's a couple of things, right? Linux is important. So, you know, Linux as an operating system is personally, from a technology and a collaborative point of view, I think Linux is possibly one of the greatest technological achievements of mankind. It might not be as sexy as walking on the moon or the pyramids, right? But you've almost 20 million lines of code, a lot of it written not by a company, cross borders, cross people. I mean, that's insane, right? And it was written, you know, with a lot of intent, but the people who get the most value today are generally companies. It runs 80+% of servers run Linux, right? And from a consumer point of view, it's often misunderstood. It's that free, highly technical. It's like the Bernie Sanders of operating systems, right? and actually, it's a wonderful tool that can be used. Everybody uses it in Android. It's under Android. It's inside of it. That's kind of different, right? So one of the things we've done is by adopting Linux, it lets us bring insanely great PC gaming to the TV. I think with Ouya and some of the Android-based systems, it's about context, right? So Android, yes, the kernel is Linux, but it's like, I don't know, it's like buying a Lamborghini, ripping out the engine and putting it in a Ford Focus, right? It's a really nice car, but there's a lot of power under the hood that you don't get to, right? And with Android, it's also about developers, and they develop in context. So if you take a great game like Terraria, right? They design in context. Their console versions of split screen, PC doesn't. When it comes to their version on the phone, it's an accelerometer, it's a small screen. That doesn't necessarily transfer to a big TV screen. So I think we didn't want to go the Android route for that reason. We wanted to really open up a way, a really open system that all these great indie developers can bring this great content to the TV in a super easy way. And Linux lets you do that. Unity lets you go cross-platform really easily. And we're seeing people port games over in like days. So that was one of our choices, right? That we really didn't, it would have been easy to create a super cheap Android-based device. That's not what we want to do. We want to do something different. This is open. This is about letting developers and users have more freedom, right? That, and we're striking a balance out as well, right? Because this needs to be incredibly easy to use. So we're going to have a really beautiful, easy to use UX layered on top of this, but also you can easily get under the hood if you want to and play around and do stuff. We want to be incredibly open to the extent that if people want to take games they've already bought on other platforms, they can go and do that on this machine. We'll have a store. We're not going to force you to buy from us. We wanted that if people buy this box, they may never spend any money with us again and still get years of value out of this product. It's not a locked-in strategy where you're forced to buy things from us. So openness is really, really key to us. So the operating system, and really opening up the valve to get great content to your TV, because you're right, I don't think it's been done yet in a way that truly leverages Linux and the community that's out there, right?
Yeah, it's funny how especially in this business, you hear a lot about how things are impossible until they become possible. There are all things that fail until they succeed. I mean, a great example, I guess, would be when we brought out Halo. People said, oh, you couldn't do a first-person shooter on a game console. You can't do it with a game controller, dual analog stick game controller. But now, of course, it's one of the most popular categories. So.
Right.
So you hear that a lot, but but I'm going to still keep doing that. I'm going to ask you about, okay, I get it. Okay, Ouya was Android-based, and it was really cell phone hardware, where you're talking about really Linux-based, more x86, traditional PC hardware. But then that raises just a different question, which is, what about Steambox? Here you had Valve, super powerful company, created this standard for Linux-based gaming that they hoped would go everywhere and connect to TVs, and it just didn't happen. So again, how is this different?
So, I mean, Steam, Valve, amazing company. But I think, when you give away too much of the experience, so to just write a standard and let multiple other companies build the boxes, there's been open and there's just giving control away, because we want to be super open, but we also want to deliver an integrated great experience for the customers that buy our box, right? That they can plug it in, switch it on, and be playing, right? And it's one harmonious experience, right? I think one of the things with Steam was so many different people building the boxes and different prices and structures, that it became, it's cumbersome to do that in a unified way, right? And we want to, really own this box. The design is something we spent a lot of time on making it just right, and we're also trying to get to a price point and to an audience. We're going to be very focused on indie games. We're not really charging out there. We're not looking for AAA to go up against Sony or Microsoft. Like, there's incredible indie games out there, right? It's not always just about the graphics, right? Games like Undertale, which, been played extensively in Ireland. I don't know how many millions of copies they've sold. It's almost Commodore 64 graphics, but it's beautiful. It's genius, right? And taking all of that in a very easy way to this platform is something we're very interested in doing, right? So I think that the Steam thing, I think it's just a different positioning. And the Atari brand, I think, is also, it's a very approachable brand. You've got, people in their 40s who remember playing it when they were, younger. But also with the younger generation, Atari sparked something as well. So, I mean, I brought, 12-year-old boys to see this Adam Sandler movie, Pixels, right? I won't comment on the movie. But what blew my mind was all of these kids knew every game that was Centipede or Donkey Kong. Like, they know it, right? I've seen kids walking around, San Francisco with Atari T-shirts, right? And it's kind of like a Ramones t-shirt. 95% of the people have never heard the music, but they wear the t-shirt. There's something magical about the brand, right? And that's something that we're also, that we're bringing to this, right? And we want to give those people, it's very approachable. So younger folks are going to get it, but you can also stream and do multiple other stuff on Ataribox as well, right? So we really want it to be a device that in the living room, it's entertainment. So it's gaming, but it's also more than gaming. And I think as a brand, we're able to do that. It speaks to a lot of different people on a lot of different levels, right?
Yeah, I mean, that really resonates with me. I mean, we actually explored that idea originally on Xbox of just creating a standard and licensing it out to other people, which would have been more the Microsoft way to do it. But the more we looked at that idea, the less we liked it. And ultimately we felt like we really needed to create an end-to-end consumer product that had, a pure vision behind it. And I think that's a big part of why we were ultimately successful. Let's move on. You've announced some things about the box, a few more today that I didn't know when I came in here, but that's
really
good.
Did I?
Maybe you didn't mean to, but that's, but one thing I think maybe I don't know if you're going to show the industrial design, but I think there were in the community I hang out with, which is a lot of people who love the old Atari. There were a lot of people really nervous about the industrial design, and when you showed the industrial design, I think. I heard a lot of those complaints go away. People really, I think you really nailed it on the ID. But one thing that kind of caught people off guard, I think, was the price. I don't know if people were expecting the price, but somewhere between $200 and $300 is my understanding of what you said. I could buy an old Xbox for that, and I could run these games, right?
You could do things like that, but one of the things for us, back to the sort of Sony Microsoft discussion is, you can get a similar price and you can go and look at those specs, but those guys are also really good about, to get true value, hooking you into monthly services and subscriptions, some exclusive and expensive games, the peripheral strategy that they hit you up with as well. So you pay a price. It's not the only price you pay, right? You typically spend a lot more money over time on those other devices. What we're trying to do is be incredibly open, even on the peripheral strategy. So we will be bringing some really cool stuff in the peripheral and input devices and controller space. But also, we want to let people use whatever they want. If there's a keyboard, a mouse, or a controller, even Xbox controller, if you have the dongle that you want to use it on Ataribox. We want to be as open on that strategy as we're being on the gaming part. That we'll have a gaming store and sell to you, but you're not obligated to do so, right? So I think from a pricing point of view, that's the challenge, because I think a lot of these other companies lose money on the box because they have a much bigger business strategy where they're taking a lot of money out of people over time, right? We're delivering something, again, that if people so desire, that they can get years of value out of this and not have to spend another penny. They may well do so. We'll sell games. We'll have these peripherals. The onus is then on us to put some great content and great input devices that people want to spend more money on. But if they don't have to. And I think that's a big difference. We're trying to be, in every facet with this, incredibly open, from the operating system to the business model, right? That nobody's done that yet. And like exclusive games is another question we get, and I kind of go, well, am I really going to go to an indie developer and say, well, you're going to put this game in a box and you are not allowed to sell it anywhere else? That kind of goes against me saying how open we're being, right? That's another example of it, which is why we want to open this thing up, that it's going to be really easy for people to put content on there. So I think that openness is huge. It's a huge part of the strategy, what we're trying to do. And again, letting people get under the hood, hopefully also enticing people to do more. Right? I mean, Atari 2600 and a lot of the early Atari products, they inspired people to get into technology, right? I don't know how much that happens with other products today. I mean, people may enjoy them, but does it inspire them to really get in and do stuff? So we're looking at doing a lot of stuff inside Ataribox with the retro games, the indie games we're bringing, but also tools that we hope that kids and people playing this are going to get excited to develop for it and to bring content to it, right? And that they'll be inspired to get more involved in technology. So I think all of that together is very different strategy to what you're seeing from some of these other players, and that impacts price, right? Because it's hard to go up against people who are willing to lose money or make very little money because they have this other strategy we don't have. Right?
Got it. So it kind of brings us to content, and I mean, I like that you're saying that you're going to make this an open market, because I think that the TV is really kind of the last closed market for indie game development. I mean, if you want, I mean, you can just publish something on the App Store. You can go to PC through Steam, which is now open. It used to be closed. But if you want to put a console game out for a TV, you know, you got to go through some complicated program through Microsoft or Sony, it's difficult. Not everybody can get in. They sort of, some years they're really into indie, some years not at all. So I love the idea of creating freedom for game developers to, you know, do what they want to do, create amazing experiences. But it's hard. I mean, you got the classic problem when you're making hardware is this chicken and egg problem is nobody wants to buy the hardware if there's no content, and nobody wants to make the content if there's no hardware to sell it on. How do you break that cycle?
So I think content is one of these things where, you know, a lot of people would love us right now to give a list of, you know, titles, and we're not going to be doing that today. We'll be doing that soon. So when we look at content, there's a few different buckets that we're going after, right? So obviously retro games, and we're going to have a massive Atari back catalog on there with an emulator. But we're working hard to make sure it's more than just Atari, right? There's going to be some surprise. This isn't like, I mean, there's a lot of these fixed closed retro boxes today where you get 20 games and that's it. This is in the hundreds. And also let people bring more and let them bring their own ROMs and their own games into that section of the content. From an indie game point of view, there's some kind of titles that we really want to have on there at launch, where as well as having them on there, we're trying to build community around them. We're also going to have a very open section where people can just load up their content. And the thing about Linux and x86 is that it's not very hard for game developers to port over because it is so open and standard. You know, we've had one good example is an incredibly, a great game that we're really hopeful we're going to have on there. We will have on there. It's a sports game. And the developers had not done a Linux version, but they did it in Unity. And they're like, well, okay, might take a few weeks, let's come back. 24 hours later, they gave us a Linux version. And they were like, this plays better than the Mac version, right? And we've been working on that for 8 months, right? So I think the way we're structuring the hardware and the software, and also commercially, how people, you know, taking away barriers for people loading on there is going to make it that make it so easy for them to put the content on there. It's not a question of why would I, it's a question of why would I not. That's how we want to make it for these guys, right? And you know, we really want to see people who've never developed before inspired to learn and to put content on there for the first time.
Yeah, it's kind of easy to forget how much the world has changed in the last decade. I mean, you know, when I was doing this, going around trying to get games for our new platform, I had to go and basically beg the big publishers in the world, you know, go visit Square in Japan and
right.
EA here and many others, and try to get them to put their games on our platform. But now anybody can make a game with these tools.
Right, and you know, that's exciting, right? So to put barriers in front of those people, commercial or otherwise, doesn't make sense. I think to your point earlier, I think that TV, you know, which has been with us for so many years, there's still this sort of, there's still this huge opportunity to break through and let this wave of content come. And we hope that what we're doing is going to make it easy for people to do just that.
But the big publishers are still there. You know, if I want to play Destiny, you know, if I want to play Call of Duty, something like that, are you going to be visiting EA down the street and begging like I used to do?
I'm not so sure about the begging, right? But I think that the you know, we're again back to what I kind of intimated earlier, right? You know, Sony, Microsoft, great products. Back to sort of the Pepsi Coke analogy, right? We're not trying to be another cola, right? We're trying to do something that's very different, more like what does he have in Seattle? Is it Jones?
Jones Soda.
Jones
yeah.
Soda,
Yeah,
right?
Cool soda.
Which can be great and can organically grow in all kinds of ways across multiple states and all around the world, right? I think that's what we're more interested in doing. So now we're not putting any big focus on AAA. There's more than enough other content out there to make this great, right? And we can open it up and set it in such a way that hopefully more and more content will come and be developed for over time, right? So right now, that we're not looking very strongly at that. We think we have more than enough great value to bring to this, based on the kind of strategy I already outlined.
Yeah, it's interesting to see whether, you know, the big publishers will have this way in the next 10 years that they had in the past. I mean, you look at something like PUBG, that's just a, you know, massive phenomenon, indie-based, you know, still in alpha really, and yet the #1 game on Steam. So,
Right.
you know, world is changing.
And it's, you know, and it's great stuff, right? It's like, you know, everyone involved in the project is a gamer in one way or another, right? So, you know, there's going to be a lot of people who have their $3,000 PC rig in one room of the house, but still the TV is kind of different. It's the more social area where it's like, yeah, okay, I might not play that game, but I could, oh, okay, you know, after watching, you know, binge watching something on Netflix on my Ataribox, I'm going to just dip into the retro world for a while, right? So, you know, we're not going to try and be everything to everyone. And all, you know, those other companies and devices we spoke about, they're all awesome. But there are going to be some people that's all they're interested in. That's great. One of the challenges that we have and what we're focused on is, you know, there's so many people that are excited about what we're doing, and our job is to focus on building the best product we can for that group of people, right? And that's what we're going to do, right? And we can't pretend to be everything. We just got to go after that group. And you know, it's a challenge because, you know, there's a lot of critics out there. Mm-hmm. And if you know, if we were to build a first-person shooter game today and put it out there on, it was an Android-based one, for argument's sake, you'd have 2 or 3 groups that would critique it. People who are into that kind of game, people who are into Android. When it comes to Ataribox, oh my God, we have so many groups of people that have different views on what it should be. There's the design community who, you know, again, 2600 was iconic. What are we going to do with it? It's almost like the Volkswagen Beetle, right? Remember where it was like that iconic design, they brought it up to date. There's hardcore Atari fans who still play with retro games who want to be able to do stuff with this. And we're doing some pretty cool stuff that we haven't announced yet. We hope they're going to like. You've got a lot of people who just remember having one as a kid and want to revisit that. You have the Linux community. You have indie gaming. There's multiple communities who have an opinion, right? And it's easy and some super excited and loving it, and some questioning it. And when you're building a product, it's easy to get drowned in the noise and just listen to everyone. What you got to do is kind of separate. There's groups who this isn't for them, and that's okay. What we got to do is focus on the people who do want this and build the best product we possibly can for that group of people. And that's what we're going to try and do.
Well, I think you said it all right there. So I think we're going to wrap it up. I'd like to thank Dean Takahashi of VentureBeat for bringing me down here. Thank you, Indiegogo, for hosting us.